This video will contain spoilers for the Ranger Reject or Go-Go Loser Ranger manga up into the most recent chapters. So in my last few videos, I've done character analysis covering some of the Dragon Keepers, and in my most recent, I spoke about the 12 executives. Since this series doesn't have a traditional power system and instead opts for different types of weapons, today I'll be going over all of the known Dragon tools that exist within the world of Ranger Reject. To start things off, what exactly are Divine Dragon tools? In Ranger Reject, the so-called good guys fight off against the evil hordes of alien invaders who possess abilities that allow them to reconstruct their bodies at will and effectively making them immortal. Since their bodies are fragile enough to crack when bumped or squeezed too hard, they are very easily to tear apart, but fit the role perfectly as foot soldiers, since they can immediately repair their undying bodies as well as reshape them into forms like blades and transform into other things. During the war with the invaders, the Rangers eventually gained a powerful tool in their arsenal, the Divine Dragon tools, or artifacts. Weapons blessed by dragon gods and are so powerful that the damage they would inflict would permanently kill or wound invaders, and these blessed weapons allow them to kill the invader executives. Along with the ability to perma-kill invaders, these weapons also allow the Rangers to suit up when called upon and have a few other special features that we'll get into later. There are 5 main dragon tools, each following one of the 5 colored naming conventions that the Rangers use, and along with them there are 5 replicas per colored tool, as well as standard Ranger weaponry and offshoot replicas. In order for one to wield one of the main dragon tools, the wielder must undergo a dangerous surgery that has a very high chance of destroying their body, and someone using a tool without this surgery will suffer immense damage as backlash. First, I'll briefly go over the standard issue dragon gadget that every member of the Rangers carries. This small dragon tool that resembles a pocket knife was made by Yellow Battalion, and you can find it strapped to the back of every Ranger. It may not have the power to completely destroy an invader, but it does still pack a big enough punch to temporarily stop them from moving, and could also do a lot of damage to other humans. When used, the basic dragon tool has 2 known functions and a third that not many know about. The first is the lightsaber-like beam blade sword form that you see very commonly. The Rangers use this form the most during the Sunday battles, as well as when the cadets are sparring with each other in the exams. The second form of this dragon gadget is when the part of it is flipped over to take the shape of a gun, allowing the user to fire bolts of energy as projectiles to deal damage from a distance. The third function is burst form, which happens when the user tinkers with the device and removes its limiter. First discovered by Yellow Battalion 2nd Class Akane Yamabuki when trying to figure out a way to make the tools more efficient at dealing with the invader threat. Ranmaru eventually found out how to do it as well and gave the information to his fellow cadets during the Baolong exam, changing their normal beam sword from a slim, concentrated energy beam to a roaring flamethrower of a blade. Increases its size tremendously and making it much more dangerous. Burst form can also be triggered, if you're lucky, by banging the tool against something solid, possibly knocking the limiter mechanism out of place, and using burst form massively drains the energy of the weapon. It's meant to be used in small bursts, as the name suggests, and not recommended for prolonged combat. Before talking about each of the main dragon tools specifically, I want to give a bit of a spoiler warning again now, because I'll mention how each one is created. Skip ahead to the timestamp below if you don't want to be spoiled on that starting now. So yeah, the dragon tools are all made from humans. To be more specific, of the Suzukuri clan, the divine dragon priestesses, and they were people blessed with power gifted to them by the dragon gods. The dragons have only been shown once or twice, but each member held a different power, and Suzukuri was the last survivor. More on Suzukuri later when we talk about Replica 2.0s. Now onto the main dragon tools. The first of the dragon tools blessed by the power of the gods would be Red Dragon Salamandra. This tool takes the shape of a long katana made out of bones and muscle tissue with a red rope tied along its handle. The katana, along with each of the other 4 main dragon tools, possess the ability to permanently wound or kill invaders at ease, and all of them share the same bone and muscle aesthetic. Each tool has 5 slots where cartridges may be inserted. The 5 cartridges possess different abilities, and not everyone is known for every dragon tool since we haven't seen each ability used in the story yet, but the Red Dragon Salamandra's cartridges can be given to other people to use in separate weapons, along with the other dragon tools. They can all do it. In Red's case, for example, when the tool is stolen, we see a cartridge retrieved that possesses the ability known as Yamato no Orochi, which is based on the Japanese folklore of the 8-headed and 8-tailed dragon. When the cartridge is within the katana, the red keeper is able to use the katana to engulf his opponent in an 8-headed and tailed flame that will likely kill them. When not attached to Salamandra, the cartridge can be slotted into a rifle that we have seen Tokita and Sosei both wield in the story, allowing them to fire off the 8-headed serpent in combat. Just a heads up, I am probably going to butcher a lot of these names and backstories, so bear with me. One more ability of Salamandra has been shown to us in a flashback. It's Hino Yagi Hayao no Kami, which looks to be another name for Kagetsuchi, which is a Japanese god of fire in Japanese mythology. When invoked, this ability summons little jet-like balls that look like fishing lures that he can fire at a target, and I believe setting them on fire or exploding on contact. We haven't seen which replica would slot this particular cartridge yet, and so far there's only a few named abilities granted to the red tool, with 3 others being left. It also needs to be stated that the main dragon tools all have a will of their own and can empower the user a step further than what is considered normal. The rifle that uses Yamada no Orochi is the only dragon tool that we've seen transform a dragon keeper to another level so far, cloaking Sosei's body in flames and making him much more powerful. The second divine dragon tool is Blue Dragon Leviathan. This tool takes the shape of a massive spear that shares the same muscle and bone pattern, with the muscle fibers this time being blue. The 5 cartridge slots are on the base of the spear above the handle area. With cartridges slotted in, the Blue Dragon tool is capable of using many powerful attacks, but I'll go over them individually. The first being the replica loaned to Hekaru from Blue Battalion, the ability named Kuramitsuha, which can be translated to Dark Water Goddess or Ravine Rushing Water in Shinto mythology. They were born from the blood that flowed when Hino Yagi Hayo or Kagetsuchi was beheaded. The cartridge is inserted into a large scythe with the same bone and muscle pattern as before, and when activated, it covers the user's entire body with a slick acid-like liquid that will burn anyone it touches besides the user. Hekaru used this ability to fling acid at D and also hit Hibiki in the face with it, scarring him for the entire series. When Blue Keeper uses this ability, he used it to melt a large rock that was hurled at him. The next replica is Umibozu, named after a yokai from Japanese folklore that took on a large black human-like shape, and it would appear over calm seas and wrecked ships. It is also known as the Sea Priest. When Umibozu's cartridge is used with a replica, it is placed inside of a tiny pistol-like weapon. The end of the pistol looks a lot like a person's twisted face. You can see teeth in the muscle fibers this time, and the tip of it appears to be nose holes where it might fire from. But when invoked, this tool summons a large face made of water that can fire off laser beams. The Umibozu face itself seems to be capable of holding a person's weight, as when Blue Keeper uses it, he's able to jump on top of its head and stand on it. Another instance of Umibozu being used is when Izome later uses a replica 2.0 version of it, and she grows massive hulkish arms that she can use to deal heavy damage, and they fade away when she's knocked unconscious, showing that her arms aren't permanently in that state. The third ability of Leviathan is Ryugu Otohime, the name being a reference to Otohime, the younger daughter of the god of the sea, who resides in an underwater palace called Ryugu. When invoked, Ryugu Otohime summons little water balls filled with fish and seahorses and things like that float towards the enemy and explode when nearby. Next is Hiruko, also known as Leech Child, which apparently would come to become Ebisu, but at birth it was sent in a boat down a river because they were born deformed and abandoned. The ability, when invoked, encases the target in a large ball of water, suffocating them without air until they die. This ball can be popped though, as we see D use a dragon tool to burst it and escape. The last of the abilities that Leviathan is able to use is Ame no Fuyukino no Kami, based on another Shinto folklore. The name means padded winter robe of heaven, and I think that name is pretty accurate to what the ability is based on. When that cartridge is slotted into somehow brass knuckles with spikes on the front, the user is able to summon a massive sheet of ice that covers enemies and everything else, almost like how a robe would cover your entire body. This ice covers everything. The third dragon tool is the green dragon Fafnir, named after the Norse dwarf whose greed led him to steal a ring that transformed him into a dragon and later get slain. Fafnir is a massive hammer wielded by the green dragon keeper and has slots around the outside of the heavy part of the hammer that let it invoke several abilities. Chidori also calls it Wrath Hammer, following the naming of his own personal gadgets that are named after the 7 deadly sins. The first of the abilities of Fafnir is Okinanushi no Kami, named after a Japanese deity Okinanushi, son-in-law of Susanoo, and became known as the Master of the Great Land. When this ability is invoked, it grants manipulation over Earth, allowing Chidori to create a massive labyrinth, but when used as a replica, it's inserted into a clawed glove with a shield attached to it. Someone using this ability could easily make walls or pillar out of stone that can bend and twist into any shape, even forming a ball. The next ability linked to Fafnir is Sukuna Bikona no Kami. It's the Shinto deity of the hot springs, agriculture, healing, magic, and a few other things. The ability, when used, allows Chidori to grow to an incredible size along with his hammer, making him much more powerful. It seems the reference is to the magic element the deity is known for. Next is the ability Amatsu Mikaboshi, which can be interpreted as Dread Star of Heaven. It looks like the reference to the word star, since the ability conjures up a small black hole-like object, according to the wiki. I had to look this one up. Chidori launches this ball into the air, and Wasose fired at it, defeating all the nearby monsters. The last ability tied to Fafnir is Ukimochi no Kami, and its cartridge is actually buried deep inside of Hisui's body, so there's no intention of Chidori retrieving it. His GFC uses this ability with a mask-like divine tool that covers her lower half of her face, allowing her to bite matter and eat energy. She can launch long-range chomps or bite up close with it, but it seems that there's a limit if she consumes too much at a time. Actually, as I was going over old chapters, I remember that Chidori does use this ability once during the forest assassination arc when Dee tries to blow him up with the dynamite. For a second I thought that it might be a plot hole until I remembered that a few chapters before, Magatia had ripped the cartridge from Hisui's body, so Chidori just hadn't given it back at this point and therefore could use the ability. The fourth dragon tool is the Yellow Dragon Jormungandr. The Yellow Dragon tool is a bow with similar features to the other weapons with the bone and muscle along with slots for cartridges. The slots are all on the outside of the actual bow part, so it kind of looks weird when they're slotted into me. The first of the yellow cartridges is Tsukiyomi, which is the god of the moon. The tool is never used by Shinya since it's the one Suzukiri keeps to herself, and it's used with a remote control that she uses that's able to do all sorts of remote functions like pausing. She can fast forward to speed up something like assisting an ally with an attack. She can also mute to allow for stealth and more. Next is Amano Hagoromo, which translates to Heavenly Feather Mantle, an object found by a fisherman that belonged to an air spirit, and without the object they would not be able to return to heaven. With this ability, Yellow is able to fully cloak himself, becoming invisible. Next up is Hono Ikazuchi no Okami. For this one I couldn't really find anything besides that they're one of the 8 thunder gods. It makes sense considering the weapon itself is a dark club that summons thunderclouds and surrounds the user in lightning that they can fire off. The last yellow ability that we've seen is Taka Mikazuchi no Kami. Taka Mikazuchi is a Japanese deity considered a thunder and sword god, fitting because when we see it used it fires off a gigantic beam in the shape of a sword. The last of the main dragon tools is the Peach Dragon Naga. The Peach Dragon tool are a pair of boots with similar features to the others, but the boots at multiple points have bones that wrap around the front of them, and the cartridges aren't easily seen, but they slide into the back of the boots. These boots, when invoked, allow for Sisera to stand, walk, and fight, something she can't normally do because she was crippled in an attack at a young age. The first known ability of the Naga is the Amaterasu Omikami, which is based on Amaterasu, the goddess of the sun, and one of the 3 deities I've mentioned before, Tsukiyomi and Susanoo, which were offspring of Izanagi. When used, this ability allows any injury, even death, to be healed as long as it's triggered within 3 seconds of the blow. Pink Keeper uses it to tease an executive after being beheaded, asking if he's never heard of the 3-second rule. The interesting thing is that when it's put into a replica, Nadeshiko uses it like a large rod in a wand-like weapon that's made up of twisting bones and has a single crystal on the end. He uses it to heal wounds, but he also uses this weapon as if it were a bat or a club, the way he swings it to kill when necessary. Next is Omoikane no Kami, based on the Shinto god of wisdom. Omoikane was once tasked with the job of locating Amaterasu, who was hiding out in a cave. Makes sense because this ability is used by stomping the foot and sending out echolocation waves that can reveal the location of other people within a large range. I think Pink Battalion member Chiyoko really got the short end of the stick here though, because in order for her to use it, she has to lift up a massive pile driver and slam it into the ground to activate the ability, whereas Pink can just stomp her foot. I have no idea where she's keeping that thing. The last known ability of the Naga is the Ame no Tajkarao no Kami. I probably butchered it. Named after the deity of the same name that was believed to be the god of sports and physical power. When invoked, it massively increases someone's speed. It looks like Pink Keeper is able to use it to do things like speed up the heart rate. She used it to try and keep Hekiru alive when he was injured, and when Noah uses it, it's through a 3-sectional staff with a blade on the end and grants her incredible speed, allowing her to bounce around and attack multiple enemies at once. For the replicas, basically many of the abilities mentioned before were recreated using clones of Suzukiri that were kept underground with the work of the former Yellow Battalion member Daidai, and when inserted, these replicas grant the user's abilities such as Juji having access to the same matter biting as Hisui's mask, or Angel, after jamming a replica into her eye, being able to create an energy beam sword like the Yellow Dragon tool. Yumeko Suzukiri hates the Dragon Keepers for what happened to her clan and to her. She is the last survivor of priestesses blessed by dragon gods that all got turned into weapons of mass destruction with different abilities. Yumeko's own abilities seem to be related to shielding and appears to somehow have been implemented into the basic dragon gadget, but it looks like not everyone knows how to use it. We see it used a few times, like when Blue Keeper blocks with it, and also Yakushi was able to gain access to a replica using it to form a prison that held Hisui and Hibiki at the beginning of the three-way battle arc. There are still a few more invocations we have yet to see, and with the way the story is going, I think we'll start seeing more soon along, and hopefully a new slew of abilities from the Neo Rangers if they have some sort of tools. But that's going to be it for this one. If you liked the video, please show that by leaving a like and subscribing. Feel free to comment your thoughts, especially if I missed anything, because I'm sure I goofed it up on some of the bits with the Japanese folklore stuff. Any of those things helps a lot to get the video pumping in the algorithm, and I really appreciate it. With your support, I wouldn't have gotten as far as I have, and I'd like to continue making these videos. For now, that's going to be it, so I'll see you again soon.